So literally for 3 months, I was like, feel like I'm gonna die. Like I thought they were gonna find like a brain tumor or tumor somewhere that like causing this. Cause what would happen is every day I'd wake up out of breath, go walk into the living room, even more out of breath. And I'd literally have to like sit down. I can vividly remember this, like sitting down going, gosh, I can't breathe very well. And then I'd try and eat and I'd literally eat like a bite of food and I'd have this happen for drained as all could be. And I could maybe answer emails for like an hour a day or something like that. Otherwise I was just laying down. So just slowly over time, it's just a little over a year since that happened, since I started getting really bad, started getting normal this last 3 months.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Disruptors. Today we have Tony Javier with 10X TV, and he flew in from San Diego to talk about what $1 million a month buys you. 1.3 million, I believe, to be exact. Now guys, I want to mission to create 100 millionaires. The information on the show alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you'll take consistent action, you will become one. And if you get value out of today's show, please hit that subscribe button. That way we can create more millionaires. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So since you've been on the show, a lot has changed, right? The real estate market has kind of been, not going down, but it's kind of interesting. There's some more challenges. So I was curious, you got to work with a lot of clients. What are you seeing right now in the landscape in the real estate investor community?
Well, luckily the election's over. I think that was a big roadblock mentally for people. And everything that I researched and understood from the election is that really it's just a mentality, right? The election over the past however many elections have shown that the stock market and the real estate market gets better after elections. At least that's what I've heard from financial advisors and people, really smart people. So I think that was the biggest thing last year that people were hung up on is, do I really want to start a new marketing channel? Do I really want to add to marketing channels? Do I really want to add anything at all when there's a lot of unknown? When really it's just a mentality. And I think, this from sales training is like a lot of business and a lot of things are just mental. So for me, my business, and I told my clients this all the time, I market every month out of the year, no matter what. So even if there's elections, even if it's November and we're slowing down and things aren't looking very good for, a month or so, we're going to continue to market because in December, they may not be wanting to sell in December, real estate or sellers, but if they see your commercials in December playing and then all of a sudden in January, they want to do something, if you weren't in front of them in December and maybe your competitor was, you may not get that deal.
Right.
So you may have spent that marketing money in December, but it's going to pay off in January, February when some of those sellers are looking to do something. But I think that's the biggest thing. And, markets, it's all market specific, right? Like in Wichita, Kansas, where I invest, we still put properties on the market and they sell within a week. Like almost every single property sells within a week. We just sold one last week, had 3 offers, and it sold for cash, $10,000 over asking. And it was only $107,000.
Gotcha.
And we priced it at the very top of the market. So I think a lot of markets are still pretty strong, like the Midwest. But I think a lot of it's just a mentality. And even if the market is softening and potentially, going down, which I don't think there's any markets that are significantly going down, adjust to it. Continue to market. Just buy cheaper. Right. Yeah. If you think in 6 months, when you flip a house at maybe 5% cheaper, just negotiate 5 or 10% cheaper to make sure you're covering. So just kind of weird how investors just got so scared last year.
Yeah.
And here we are, first full week of January, I believe. If I'm not mistaken.
First full week.
And the first Monday, we had 3 people jump on board and say, hey, we want to go ahead and start TV that we had talked to at least a month before.
Yeah.
And the only thing that changed was the beginning of the year and election. Election's over in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Talking about like stock market goes up, real estate market goes up. If I were to attribute to anything, right, it's complete speculation. There's just more certainty, right? Like, it doesn't matter who wins. There's just uncertainty in there. We don't know what's going on. But now that we know who's president, now we can speculate more positively or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe that could be it. And then once the honeymoon is over, we'll see what happens.
And don't get me wrong, if Kamala would have gotten in, I might have in my back of my mind been like, oh gosh, what's going to go on? But I still would have done business the same. I just don't think things are going to change that much. Now, there might be some other industries that could be majorly affected by who got in office. But for real estate investing, as long as you're buying smart, you should be fine.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's a good point you mentioned though, like with the election coming and going, that you keep spending because you want to stay in front of them, which is important in marketing, right? Like Google PPC, no one's gonna notice if you weren't spending for the month of November. But for TV, they're gonna see if you were on October, November, December, or really like several months before then, because the way marketing works, you got to stay in front of them over and over and over again. So that makes total sense. Any other trends you see? Because like the reason why I'm asking, you have like over 100 clients, right? Mm-hmm. So you can kind of see kind of like the feel, ebbs and flow. Do you see any other trends?
I think the biggest thing is that the investors that do the best with TV, and I think it has to do with any marketing campaign, is that they're just dialed in. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that they have a good CRM, they have a good lead manager, they have a good acquisitions person, and good is subjective, right?
Sure.
But to me, it comes down to how are you handling those leads? So even if you're not a great salesperson, if you can answer the call or get back to that person within a short amount of time, get to the house very quickly within 24 to 48 hours, make the offer and try and get that sale right away. You want to strike while the iron's hot. Mm-hmm. So the ones that we've seen where they're struggling is we kind of dive into their sales and they're just not handling the leads properly, is what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. So if I looked at all of my clients, the top 20%, which I can visualize some of them in my mind, they started with me. They have increased their ad spend over time, and they haven't missed a payment, and they haven't changed their advertising spend unless they go up, mm-hmm. right? And it's because I think they're handling the leads properly, they're doing the deals, and they know how to handle them.
Yeah.
So I think, if anything, that's the number one thing that I could say to anybody is if they're starting a marketing campaign, is to make sure that they're handling the leads properly. And then don't always believe when someone says something doesn't work. Mm-hmm. You don't know why it didn't work. Did they do it right? Maybe they hired the wrong person to help them implement it. Did they handle the leads properly? Did they spend enough money? And did they give it enough time? And I think that's another thing to touch on is if someone runs TV with us for at least 6 months, the cancel rate is extremely low.
Gotcha.
And typically it's because, like, usually when we launch TV, month one, just like when I launched 12 years ago, it performs very quickly. Mm-hmm. But sometimes there's markets, or sometimes maybe someone doesn't connect as well with the audience for some reason when they're on TV. It just takes a little while to ramp up. Mm-hmm. But anybody who's waited 6 months when they struggled kind of in the beginning, and when I say struggle, that's subjective too, right?
Sure.
Struggling to me would be like losing money, but to some people, if they're getting like a 2 to 3 times return in 3 months, they're kind of like panicking because they want that 5 times return, or at least 3. And sometimes that doesn't always happen right out of the gate. Because we've had, anybody who has asked me, like, what is your, like, I've already kind of touched a little bit on some of the things that are important for marketing, but you really have to give things a certain amount of time to really see how they're working.
Yeah.
So the first 6 months, you get a pretty good gauge. And even the first 3 months, you can kind of like, okay, there's some traction here at least. Mm-hmm. If there's no traction in 3 months, then obviously, but like if there's some traction, give it some more time. But you have to look in almost 12-month increments, because like TV may have done X this year, but the year before it did twice as much. And the year before it maybe did 3 times as much. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of investors just don't give things enough time in order for them to pan out.
Yeah. Oh, I think probably every entrepreneur is like, I want this to work fast. And then not giving enough time. Because I see the same thing with direct mail, right? Like someone wants to do direct mail and they have enough budget to do 3 months, like don't start. Mm-hmm. And I imagine the same thing with TV.
Yeah.
So 3 different questions here. You mentioned lead management, acquisition. They have a good systems in place. I've heard arguments for TV leads, PPC leads, of who should answer the phone, to be a lead manager or an acquisition manager. Do you have a position on this?
I think it depends on the size of the team. Like if someone's not running very many marketing channels and their acquisitions person isn't on a ton of appointments, they're on 1 or 2 a day, I think it's okay for acquisitions people to answer the phone. But if an acquisitions person is, on appointments 3 to 4 hours out of the day, and I'm just throwing a number out, I'm just kind of assuming, just kind of off the top of my head, that you should have a lead manager. The lead manager is there to answer the phone.
Right.
They answer the phone. They make sure the lead goes into the CRM, which obviously acquisition people aren't always the greatest at.
Correct.
They're able to put them in the right place. They're able to set up the appointment. They're able to follow up after the appointment or confirm that the appointment, before the appointment, to make sure the seller shows up, and then follow up after and just manage the database. So that's what we do. We have a lead manager that answers the phone, and she manages the CRM. And then our acquisitions person goes out and does the appointments.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best system, to have a lead manager. But if someone doesn't have enough leads, enough cash flow to support a lead manager, which really lead managers, I mean, our lead manager is in the Philippines at, I think off the top of my head, something like 20 or 30 grand, which is actually really good for Philippines.
Great.
But it's not that much in the grand scheme of things, because if you miss one deal, that could be 20 to 30 grand out the door.
Oh, for sure.
So I think lead managers are definitely gold. And then, and if you don't have a lead manager, I think if the call does go to an acquisitions person, if they don't answer the phone, then it should route to an answering service, because I'm always a fan of a human answering the phone. Because anytime I've ever called a place I wanted to do business with, if they answered the phone, I'm like probably 10 times more likely to do business with them. Otherwise, if I have to leave them a message and someone gets back to me, I'm either kind of forgetting about them, or I'm moving on to the next person to call. And the first person to answer the phone and service me is the person that, I'm going to go with.
Yeah. Live answer stops you from calling other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the reason why this question comes up, because I've heard some teams make the argument that you want the best salesperson to take the inbound calls or the hottest calls, right? So that they feel taken care of and they don't call anybody else. So, but yeah, to your point, absolutely. If it's a live answering service, then at least they feel like they talked to somebody and they don't feel this inclination to call anybody else. Do you have a preferred company you work with for a live answer?
Yeah, Answer First is who we use. We have a lot of clients that use Call Porter. There's no perfect answering service. I mean, they're call centers, so there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds, of people answering the phone, and the quality control is probably pretty tough. Yeah. But in my perspective, when you have an answering service answer the phone, it's just to get basic information: name, phone number, email address, address of the property, how much you're asking, how did you hear about us, and why are you selling? I think are the only questions that we have them ask. And if they start asking questions, it's, hey, we're just gathering the information. We're going to pass this on to a representative. They should give you a call back in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah. And to your point, right, there's no perfect one. Because I know when I was using a live answering service, I would get frustrated and aggravated. And we, always submit feedback, but had to remember at the end of the day, there's some kids in the middle of the South making like $8 an hour. That's who's answering the phones. Can't get super critical if that's the case. And then answer rate. So you kind of alluded to this one here. Your best operators, what percentages of the calls do you think that they're getting a live person on the phone? Like someone calls in TV ad and then they dial into the company. What do you think the answer rate is?
Do you know Chad Young?
I do.
Has he been on here?
Yes.
Okay.
Great guy.
So he's a client of mine, and I was talking to him the other day, and he shared all this publicly on an interview I did with him. So it was interesting because he wanted to know his live answer rate, and his coach, I think it's Amanda Dean, if I'm not mistaken. She does some coaching for us as well. She asked him what his answer rate was, and he goes, I'm pretty sure it's like 90%, which answer rate, from what I understand, the definition is that you're either answering it live or you're getting back to them within 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that.
For me, answer rate is it does not go to voicemail.
Okay. So it's different for different people. Yeah. So I think his was get back to them within like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that. And he thought it was more than 90%. And he went back and he really dug in and he noticed it was only like 30%.
30.
And so I think a lot of people think their answer rate is better than it is. In fact, I'm probably the same way. And I actually dug in when Chad and I had that conversation. I went back to my lead manager and I'm trying to get her to figure out how to calculate the answer lead rate without her just manually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's software and stuff that can do that, but I don't know the data from all of our clients. They don't report that kind of data, but from what I have with Chad Young, I know that he's like at 90% He said when he looked at his answer rate before, and then once he corrected that over, I don't know what time period, 6 or 12 months or whatever it was, he said he did, I don't want to butcher this, but I want to say it's like 20% more deals with no additional leads just by answering the phone and getting his answer rate up.
Yeah, and I bring this up, answer rate. It was not a stat I cared about before until I saw Eric Brewer talk about this at Collective Genius. And he was saying like his answer rate was like 40%. And that's all they worked on for like a quarter. And then he got it up to like 80-something%. And so, and obviously, like you said, right, you get more deals just by answering the phone. And so like that was something we went back to our teams, like, you guys need to get better at this. We need to get our answer rate. The target was 90%. I don't know where we ended up at. But we also had Austin McCurdy here. He was on the show about a year ago, maybe a little less than that. And he was like the best Papa John's owner. And he had like multiple franchises in Chicago. And like they're trying to figure out like, what's his secret? How is he so successful? And he only cares about one metric.
Answer rate?
Did you answer the damn phone? Like, that's it, right? If a college kid calls in hungry, you answer the phone. You don't want him calling anybody else, right? Like, urgency is pretty high. You're hungry.
Yeah, I don't know if San Diego is just bad, but there's a few of my favorite restaurants. Like, you call and 90% of the time they don't answer, and it's really frustrating because I could order online,
right?
But it's like maybe they don't have what I want online that I need to call in, or I need to ask them, some kind of question, and I don't get it. It's really frustrating. Yeah, for sure.
So, and then the last one, speed to lead. Do you have any data on speed to lead? Like, what is required, best practices, or so on?
For us, we want to get out there within 24 hours. That's kind of our rule of thumb. So if someone calls in at 4 p.m., obviously it'd be hard to get out there at 6 or 7. That's the advantage of having an acquisitions person answer the phone.
Right.
Is if it's 4 p.m. and they don't have any other appointments, they can just shoot out there and that kind of thing. So that is an advantage. But 24 hours is kind of our rule of thumb of when we want to get someone out there. Unfortunately, my lead manager, she's not great when someone says, "Oh, I can only do next Monday," or several days out. She's not really good at being like, "Well, we have someone in that area. They're going to be there. Do you think we could meet that day?" And we're kind of working on some scripting up there. Yeah. But I would say if they're willing to meet, 48 hours is probably the max. But I'd say 24 hours.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I told this story on a previous podcast, but I remember getting. So back then, have you heard? Did you ever know of Vobre? I don't even know if they're still around. Voice office box for real estate.
No.
So this was back in like 2005, probably. It's a long time ago. So they didn't have very many systems. But I remember getting the system where if they called in, that you would get a text message if you missed a call. So at that point, I was answering the phone. I was the acquisition person. So I was answering the phone at that point. So I went into the mall and I didn't get service, and I went out of the mall and boom, I got a message that someone had called, and had I not had that service, I would not have known that they called.
Right.
So I called them back right away. This was in the evening, I think 6 o'clock. And I got there the next day at 9 a.m., got the deal under contract, and she had at least two or three other people coming later that day. And I think I ended up making like 35 or 40,000 on that deal.
Yeah.
So that's a difference between like a good sales process, a good marketing campaign, right? Because if you spend money on marketing and you get that deal, and maybe you don't get any other deal that month, I mean, that makes a really good month for that marketing campaign compared to not. Yeah. So yeah, 24 to 48 hours, because these days people, when they call, TV's a little bit better. TV, when they call you, I say typically, more often than not, they're calling you and only you because you're hitting them at the right time and nobody else is hitting them.
Right.
But these days, I mean, if they're going on Google and filling out form, they're filling out 3 or 4 forms.
At least, yeah. Yeah, I typically hear 6 or 7.
Yeah, the other day, I say the other day, could have been several months ago, but I remember a seller told us they were getting 10 offers. They weren't going to make a decision until they got 10 offers.
Right.
And I can't remember if we got that deal or not, but that's kind of what we're dealing with these days, is people know that there's options out there.
Yeah, and then also with this is the microwave culture, right? Like, even the older people are getting less and less patient, right? Like, I mean, what were we with YouTube? I think we had to be like 10 or 15 minutes to be able to have commercials, right? Like if YouTube video was less than 10 or 15 minutes, you didn't really get a chance to monetize it. And then it went down to 8. And now I think it's like 4 or 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
Because with TikTok, everyone's attention span went right out the window. You know, like if you don't, and I'm guilty of it, right? If I'm on TikTok, like if the hook is not compelling or like the video doesn't look compelling within like even a fraction of a second, I'm on to the next one.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think we're all in this microwave culture where we're like, we might have been impatient 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but today we were grossly impatient.
Yeah, and it's probably, I mean, imagine it's only I don't know how much worse it could get, but I imagine it's only going to get worse. I'm actually glad we didn't grow up with social media.
Oh, man. Yeah, seriously. The statistics I've heard, right, is like the goldfish has attention span of 7 seconds, right? It's what
humans are like 3 seconds now or something.
Yeah, as a species, I think we're down to like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
It's pretty awful.
It's brutal.
Yeah. Okay, so before we go to the talking about, you know, what $1 million buys you, you were on the show, I think a little over a year ago, and we were talking about TV, we were talking about pickleball, we were talking about all these different things. And then I opened up Facebook one day, not too long thereafter, and I think I see a picture of you inside an ambulance or something like that, right? What happened? Today's podcast is brought to you by motivatedleads.com. With them, you can get $300 worth of quality local leads sent exclusively to your inbox by just mentioning my name. I've used them, and they're one of the best producers of solid seller leads on a local level. And they fully guarantee the leads that they send you. To get your $300 free credit, just head over to motivatedleads.com, hit the claim your area button, and let them know that I sent you.
Yeah. So, this time last year, which was not too long after the show, I pretty much thought I was dying.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things happened. I think it was, like I mentioned a little bit ago, I think it was a perfect storm. So, mold, we found out was an issue. And the way we found out was actually my son. My son was having behavioral issues.
Oh, really?
And, through a mom's group, my wife posted his results from some kind of medical testing she did. And they said, oh, you've got to be in mold based on the levels that he's got of whatever. And she's like, no, we live in like a 10-year-old house. It's immaculate. Like my wife keeps the house extremely clean. So anybody who would walk into her house would be like, there's no way there's mold here.
Yeah.
And so they thought my son was autistic, and he was 3 years old at the time. And actually 4 years old at the time. And so then we got tested, and we found out we had mold in our system. So we're like, okay, there is mold in our house. So we ended up finding the mold, remediating, getting rid of the mold. We moved out of mold, and I had been sick off and on for like a year, like literally every month. I was getting sick once or twice a month, just normal sick though. And then I think just over time, the mold, combination of mold, and when I went to go see a naturopath, she gave me high doses of iron. She gave me high doses of testosterone, and found out she didn't test me correctly for either of them, and gave me doses that were, even if I needed them, were way outside the realm of what she should have given me. Because iron is a metal, right? So like, it can be toxic. And then some other things happen. I was flying my own airplane, so there's, lack of oxygen. There's, EMFs and, electromagnetic fields. Got COVID a couple times, and my body just wanted to shut down. It was literally at the point where the night, the ambulance ride, I was actually sitting on the couch. I wasn't feeling good that day. And I literally just felt like tingling going up all the way through my body and through my arms. And I just started like shaking and shivering. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe as well. And I told my wife, and it could have been anxiety that was causing the breathing, but there's something going on with my body.
Understandable.
And I told my wife, I said, she asked me, she goes, do you think I need to call an ambulance? Because usually she's the one that's like, whatever, you'll be fine. She's like, do I need to call an ambulance? And I'm like, I think you do. So the ambulance comes, and I get into the, they do all these kind of tests. They're like, okay, I think we need to take you in just to be safe. hug my son. He's like, what the hell's going on? And so I go to the emergency room, and of course they tell me it's anxiety, don't worry about it, whatever. And I had COVID a couple of times. So I thought maybe it was long COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt this way for probably at least 3 months.
So you checked out?
Checked out fine. So I mentioned POTS syndrome to you. I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole with all this health stuff. But POTS syndrome is basically where your body can't regulate your blood pressure. So if you bend over or if you do something, it can totally throw you off. And I think that's what happened was my body was so out of whack that when I bent over to pick something up and then I got up, I was like feeling like, so I went and sat on the couch and then I crossed my legs, which is even worse because then you're dysregulating your blood flow in your legs now. So now your whole body's feeling it. And so when I got into this stretcher, they carted me out and I went flat, it regulated me. So then I started kind of like feeling better. So when I go into the hospital, of course, they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like they do blood work. And so it's called dysautonomia, which was caused by all this stuff where your body's just basically out of whack. So literally for 3 months, I was like, I feel like I'm going to die. Like I thought they were going to find like a brain tumor or tumor somewhere that like was causing this. Cause what would happen is every day I'd wake up out of breath. I'd go walk into the living room, even more out of breath. And I'd literally have to like sit down. I can vividly remember this, like sitting down going, gosh, I can't breathe very well. And then I'd try and eat and I'd literally eat like a bite of food and I'd have to go back to bed. And this happened for
You're just drained.
Many weeks, drained as all could be. And I could maybe answer emails for like an hour a day or something like that. Otherwise, I was just laying down trying to feel better. So just slowly over time, it's just, it's been a little over a year since that happened, since I started getting really bad. And just started getting normal this last 3 months.
Yeah.
It's been a slow process.
So 2 questions. One probably more important than the other. So we'll go with the less important question. How did you run your business while you're going through all this?
So that's the beautiful thing. We actually had a record year in two out of the three main businesses that I own and run. So back in 2010, I kind of hit rock bottom mentally where I just had to fire my whole staff. And this has happened like 2 or 3 times at this point. So I ended up staffing back up smartly. I hired my sister and I hired a coach who had a business that ran without him. And so within about 3 to 4 years, I was able to automate the real estate investing business where I didn't need me anymore. This was back in 2014. And I moved from Wichita, Kansas to San Diego. So when I started 10X TV, I wanted to do the same thing.
Right.
And so luckily out of the gate, I had a good media team already. So they handled all the media buying and all of that. I did the sales for the first probably 2 years. I was the best at it. And I actually kind of like doing it, even though I'm not a natural born salesperson. It's nice talking to high level people that you can, positively affect their business.
Right.
And so, but I knew that I couldn't do that forever. Like I knew that there were other things that I wanted to work on and do and have more free time. So I hired a salesperson a couple of years ago, and they've been amazing. Noah, some of you guys that are listening may know Nope. So I was fortunate enough when this happened that the business ran without me. I could literally just answer high level questions on email, maybe do a meeting every once in a while. In fact, there were many months where I just didn't take any meetings. Like my team meetings, I'm like, you guys have to do it. Every once in a while, I might pop on for a little bit and say hi to the team, like, hey guys, give them a little encouragement, whatever. But they ran without me. We were at least 10, if not 20% better 10X TV this year than the year before, or 2024 than 2023. From the flipping standpoint, I think we were up like probably close to 50%, 40%, maybe something like that. And I always encourage people, like, even if you don't need to automate your business or think that you want to be in your business, get it to a point where it runs without you. So if something like this does happen, I'll tell you what, if I didn't have the people that I have and I was running one of these businesses, or especially both of these businesses, and I was the key factor to it, having to go out on appointments or having to do sales, I would have been in trouble. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I live in San Diego, so it's super expensive. I've got, pretty decent amount of overhead. And if the business depended on me while I was out, then I would have been in really bad shape.
Gotcha. You mentioned 2 out of 3 businesses got better. Which business did not get better?
Well, actually, the other one did get better too, just not substantially.
Oh, got it.
It's co-working space. We built a big co-working space in Wichita, Kansas, where I house my team, and we do have like private offices and venue space and stuff like that. But that actually did get better, just not as substantial as the other two businesses.
Got it. So then the other question, the more impactful question, and then by the way, that was a great answer. Like your business is already built to withstand this and survive this. What perspectives have changed since not knowing whether you're going to be here on this planet or not?
That's a great question. I literally know what it feels like to be 90 years old now.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like I used to judge people that when I would pull up to a stop sign and they would walk really slow. We got to go this way too. And they know you're there. They know you're there, and they're just walking really slow.
Yeah.
And I used to get really frustrated. Or when people didn't open the door for me. So when I was going through this, I literally, like, going upstairs, I'd have to go up one step at a time. Like literally, sometimes I'd have to rest after step 3 and then rest after step 5. Like going upstairs was like brutal. Walking across the street was the same way. I was literally like an old man walking across the street. So with that being said, I felt like my life fast forward like 50 years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, okay, how much longer am I going to be here? And so I feel like I still go back to, my old ways sometimes, but like when people are crossing the street slow, it doesn't bother me anymore. Someone doesn't open the door for me, I'll judge them for like a second. Cause like, you know what I'm saying? When you're right behind them, they know you're there.
Could have just held it. Come on.
Dude, just come on. Just hold it a little bit.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me anymore. Maybe for like a split second. The things that I take on now have to be purposeful. And I use that as a loose term. And to me, that means that I get fulfillment out of it. It's got to benefit to me. It's got to benefit to others. And it's not high risk, high reward. We talked about this just right before you guys hit play. I used to be high risk, not in everything, but there were some things that I just throw money at that I'm like, all right, this is going to work. I'm going to make a bunch of money. If I don't, I may lose some money, and some of those ended up losing a lot of money. So from a business perspective, I don't work that much anymore. I say not work that much. I probably work 20 to 30 hours a week on average. I take off early to go play pickleball. If I'm not feeling well, which still I'm close to 100%, but I still have my days where I'm like, oh man, I can still kind of feel the effects. I'll just take the afternoon off and just go to the beach and hang out, or like I said, go play pickleball, or whatever. Go pick my son up early from school and go hang out with him. So you hear people with these like near death kind of experience, and I wasn't near death, I don't think. But it felt like I was near death.
But you were thinking about it.
Totally. Like I thought my time was like really close, because it felt that way. Just think things are like, I'm not saying I'm, blissful 100% of the time, but I can tell that things don't bother me nearly as much, that I'm more patient with things, and that I'm much slower to take things on, because I know if I take things on, that I have to deal with the repercussions if they don't go the way that I want them to, which in business, that happens quite often.
Yeah.
So I have to be okay with the worst case scenario. So I'm getting ready to move to Boise, Idaho here in a few weeks. I think that's going to help me slow down a little bit too, just because the pace is slower there. But I'm just going to kind of start let things come to me instead of trying to push them so hard. Just take things for granted less, and just super grateful for being back to healthy.
So I definitely could have used this talk on Monday night, because I went to Collective Genius Select, right? I flew there Sunday, came back Monday. So probably not the best decision, but I did. So I was delayed 2 hours from Phoenix to Dallas, and then another 4.5 hours from Dallas to Sarasota. And the worst part really with American Airlines is they don't tell you like we're gonna be 4 hours late. It's like, it's gonna be an hour, and then it's gonna be another hour.
Yeah.
Right. So like complete waste of time. So that was really irritating, but it's like, whatever. Flying back the next day, it was actually on time from Sarasota to Dallas, but another hour delay from Dallas to Phoenix. So I touched down at like 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Which kind of like getting, on your last nerve. And as I'm about to get off, I get out of my seat. This old lady gets in front of me, right? Like, it was wide open. This old lady gets in front of me. I'm like, okay, fine. Like, just be patient. And then as she's moving along slowly, she stops so that two older ladies get in front of her. And I'm like, I am just slowly dying on the inside. I don't say anything because I still respect my elders. But man, I was like miserable as can be on the inside. Gotta use this perspective.
Yeah, totally. So you and I have the same personality. It's like we want to get from A to B as quickly as humanly possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, things like that don't bother me. Like even coming here today, I was supposed to fly, my plane here this morning, and the winds and the turbulence were just like, even big planes were having issues in the weather today. And so I was, instead of just, getting upset because I haven't flown in a while. So I really wanted to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, things happen for a reason. I guess I wasn't supposed to be up in the air today, and, flew commercial. So just gotta take what things give you, and things happen for a reason. In fact, last night, interesting enough, I had a intuition that I should fly commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know if like something was going to happen or what, but sometimes you have to listen to your instincts and kind of go with them.
Gotcha. All right. So we led off the show talking about what 1.3 million buys you. So what does 1.3 million buy you per month?
So we are managing TV commercials for real estate investors. So we are managing 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, somewhere in that range of TV commercials. Because it kind of fluctuates with the time of year and people, increase or decrease their ad spend. So it buys you a lot of commercials.
Mm-hmm.
I think our average real estate investor is probably spending between $8,000 and $10,000 a month, which a lot of people don't understand how inexpensive TV can be. When I started TV 13 years ago, I started with a $3,000 a month budget. Ended up 10xing my money within the first 30 days and kind of was off and running from there. And there's a lot of markets that can't quite get away with 3, but 5,000 to 7,000 a month in a lot of markets can actually go a long way. So when I started in Wichita, Kansas with 3,000 a month, that got me, I think, 300 commercials a month, give or take. And you would think that it would be $10,000 or more in most markets.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd maybe get 50 to 100. It's kind of the perception from what I used to believe and what people tell us.
Right.
So that's what we're managing right now. We're seeing that, as I mentioned, the ones that are spending the money that are dialed in are the ones that are getting the best returns.
Mm-hmm.
I think that 2025, people are going to need to find a marketing channel or marketing channels that are less competitive than others. Mm-hmm. So obviously Google PPC is really competitive. Pay per lead is pretty expensive or pretty competitive. The prices are getting driven up. And then if they're selling to multiple people, you have multiple people you're competing with. People are buying the same list and cold calling and texting them, which, I still don't know how people are getting away with texting these days, but they are.
Whatever.
So we have inbound channels, a lot of inbound channels. So TV is our number one lead source. Radio is soon behind, and we're actually helping clients implement radio as well. Those right there are kind of the 1-2 punch, I feel like. And then, we add on direct mail to that. We do billboards, which are not a great return on investment. In fact, I think there's only been 1 year that we've actually made money from billboards, but they're not super expensive. And I feel like it helps TV and radio, helps the whole mass media thing. And then Facebook's kind of the same thing. We don't get a big return on Facebook, but we get so many impressions that it's going to help hopefully our TV, radio, and everything else that we do. So those are kind of the things that I'm seeing from my perspective. And also, as I mentioned, clients that are dialed in, not only are they managing the leads well, but they're not depending on one or two lead sources.
Mm-hmm.
They're 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I counted mine the other day. It was like 8 or 10 lead sources, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So like if one goes dry for a period of time, whether it's a quarter or even sometimes a year. One of my clients actually last year, he's like, TV wasn't the great. TV out of the gate 4 years ago was amazing. Second year was good. Year 3, it kind of like, it didn't tank, but it went from like a 5 to 7x all the way down to like a 3.
Uh-huh.
And then, I'm sorry, that was 23. And then 24 just crushed it again. And, but he had other lead sources that helped him pick TV up while he was, while TV was kind of like staggering a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way with most investors. They need multiple lead channels, or the successful investors, they need multiple lead channels to pick them up when one or maybe a few of them aren't doing very well.
Gotcha. So a couple of different things. Yeah, I think it is surprisingly inexpensive to get on TV, because I think there's this idea that you gotta be ready to drop a lot of money to be on TV. 8 to 10,000 is what you're saying, like your average guy is spending. That's very affordable. You don't even have to do one deal a month. It's less than one deal a month to break even there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really surprising. Do you think TV is still a slept on marketing channel? Because like 5 years ago, there wasn't that many people doing TV, right? Like you were doing it, Doug Hopkins was doing it. And that was it. Do you think it's still being slept on? Hey, Disruptors, if you're struggling to scale your business due to a lack of capital for your deals, this message is for you. I've been part of the Collective Genius Mastermind for over 4 years now, and one of the biggest benefits I get as a member is access to 100% financing for fix and flips. If you're doing at least 10 deals a year, want to network with top-tier investors from across the country, and need access to 100% financing to continue scaling, go to 100percentmoney.com. I've had my friend and CEO of the Collective Genius, Jason Medley, put together a short video with all the details. That's at 100percentmoney.com.
Yeah, so when I joined CG several years ago, me and Brad Chandler were the only one doing TV in that whole group. When I joined Investor Fuel 20 or 21, it was me and one other person that was doing TV, and he ended up becoming a client of ours. And now we have like 30 some that we're running TV for Investor Fuel out of, 100 some members. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think even though it's become more popular over the last 5 years since I've been talking about it publicly, and our clients go out and do podcasts and stuff, and they talk about how they've been having results and stuff too. Yeah. There's still this misconception. In fact, I went to Boardroom. Can't go there. Yeah. And same thing there. I don't think there's very many, if any, doing TV in that whole group. And I went up and did a presentation, and they were asking questions, and there were 2 guys that were doing a lot of deals, and they asked me what the average ad spend was. And I told them, just like I mentioned, that a lot of markets you can get away with 5,000 to 7,000. Our average client is doing 8 to 10, but that's with those that are, also spending 20, 30, 50, maybe $100,000 a month. But they were shocked at how inexpensive it was. Mm-hmm. And they didn't realize that they would get hundreds of commercials a month. They thought that they would just get like maybe 1 or 2 spots a day or something. Right. So that's the great thing about TV, is that there's so many misconceptions. There's a misconception that it's too expensive, that their business isn't big enough, that they need to be like a big corporation or something like that, that they need a face for TV. A lot of people, like we've had some people that, you wouldn't think would be on TV, and they actually do really well. What was the other one I was just thinking of? Oh gosh, there was another important one. But yeah. The TV's going away. The TV's dying.
Really?
Which TV is declining somewhat in
so TV viewership is going down. Got it.
Yeah. And so if you look at the data, it went from everybody's watching TV back in 2000, before really the internet started blowing up and streaming came along. But it's slowly declining. But if you look at the population, or the demographic that we're going after, which is 55 plus, right, lower income, what are they doing? A lot of them are watching TV and they're doing it all day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually, I wish I had the graph that I could pull up here, but there's a study from it's either 22 or 23. They interviewed people 55 plus with houses $150,000 or less. 90% of them are still watching TV, regular TV. The average viewer is close to 2.5 hours a day of TV. And when they were asked what triggered an online search for them, 67% or 60-some% over all the other marketing methods, 60-some% said it was TV was the number one thing that drove them to do an online search. Mm. So for that reason, there's not nearly as many people doing TV. And not only that, but if I said, Steve, go do TV, right? Mm-hmm. You could probably figure it out. You may not be the best at it, or it may take you a while. But that's a great thing, because if you go and you want to do PPC, there's a dozen guys you'd probably, someone who could refer you to. But with TV, it takes longer. You have to develop a script. You have to go to the stations and shows, or stations and find the shows that work for you, negotiate the rates. In fact, in 2005, I had this idea of being on TV, and I actually had no idea what I was doing. I called one station, NBC, and I don't think I called any other stations. And they gave me a $3,000 budget, 30 or 50 commercials or something like that. And it took a while to do. And then once I finally got on air, I think I broke even in 3 months and I stopped. Mm-hmm. So knowing what I know now, obviously I would have kept going, but I also don't know, I didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And so, TV is a harder medium to get on. You have to, we know what scripts work, we know what stations and shows work, so it's easy for us. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people just don't want to go through that. Yeah. Even if they have someone managing it for them, they still don't want to go through the whole thing. And really, we make it super easy. Like our clients are usually, it's like 1 or 2 hours of time for them to approve the approve the script, approve the ad spend, and if they want to be in the commercial, shoot the commercial, and they're off and running. So.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's still a secret. Because anytime anyone asks me, is like, what should I do? It's like, well, the main two I hear all the time is PPC and TV. Like right off the bat, hot inbound leads. And with TV, you're an authority because, like we were saying earlier, people think TV is more expensive. People are watching TV, also think it's expensive. So you're an authority right off the bat.
Perception. Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you have any data as far as you were saying, you do a billboard, not to get deals from the billboard, but pluses everything else. Do you have any data behind like doing TV, radio, direct mail, Facebook, and billboard, like how much it all, what's the word I'm looking for? The omnipresence, how much that helps? I'm just curious.
No specific data, but I know it does because when people call us from TV, they sometimes will say they heard us on the radio, and almost every time they say they called us from radio, they saw us on TV just because we're on TV a lot. Like I think I have 1,200 commercial spots running every single month, so it's like we're saturated pretty heavily. Billboard, we don't really ask them. We probably should start asking about billboard now. We just started doing them more in the last year. Yeah. We don't spend a lot. I actually own a co-working space, as I mentioned. I've got a big digital billboard that I put on there. It's on a major highway, so we rotate some other ads with Pine. But yeah, not a lot of people mention the billboard. Now that we have this conversation, not a lot of people mention it, but I know that they see it.
Right.
But I think the direct response is more from TV and radio, and that's kind of why and usually they're more engaged. When they're driving down the street, they may just see it for like 1 second or 2 seconds. Whereas with radio, 60-second commercial, then in their car, they're hearing 60 seconds of it. TV, it's 30 seconds. They're hearing it in the living room, and they're hearing it over and over. So those are the ones that they respond to more. But the great thing about TV and radio is that it helps the other marketing campaigns.
Right.
So I know for a fact we get at least one, if not several deals a year from postcards where they say they called us and only us because out of a stack of postcards because we were on TV. Incredible.
There you go. So definitely pluses, we know for sure. direct mail. This might be a dumb question, but is it the same logo and company on every single platform?
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies get this wrong, especially real estate investors, because a lot of them do marketing themselves, is that they don't tie everything together.
Yeah.
So with us, we do as seen on TV on our website. We do it on our billboard. We do it on our direct mail piece. Mm-hmm. In fact, on the direct mail piece, I put a screenshot of me on the TV commercial so they can correlate the TV commercial with the postcard.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything should look very similar. Obviously, if you're doing like postcards are tricky because unbranded postcards statistically kind of do better. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't compare it to the as seen on TV postcard, that if they're on TV that they send that out and see what the data is there. But we did notice that when we put as seen on TV with the image, then our response rate did go up for sure.
That makes total sense. What about phone numbers? Are the phone numbers the same? All of them?
No, I think if you're doing really good at marketing, you need to have tracking phone numbers. Mm-hmm. That does take away from it a little bit, because I know when I call a place and I see a different phone number, I could be like, why do they have two phone numbers, kind of thing. But yeah, we have a different postcard phone number, different billboard, TV, radio. We do for TV and radio, we do have the last 4 digits, which is SELL, SELL. Mm-hmm. So that way they kind of correlate those two, because those are out there the most. But I think you need to have tracking phone numbers. We have had a couple clients that say they don't do tracking phone numbers, and they're really good at like asking and finding out where the lead came from. Mm-hmm. But we've had many people that are adamant that they Googled us and they found us on Google, and then we get to the closing table and they're like, oh man, I'm so glad I saw your TV commercial or something like that, you know? So it's really hard to like get the real data from people of like where they came from. So having a tracking phone number definitely helps you.
Yeah. And the only reason I'm asking is like, you talk about, I don't know if you guys use the jingle for the phone number, right? But like one number is a lot easier to remember. So that's the only reason why I asked that. Like, cause it's a trade-off, right? Do I want better tracking, or do I want to be more memorable?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. And then right now, I thought TV was not a secret anymore, but apparently it still is. But like there'll be multiple people in one market, right? And they're all using TV. How do you separate yourself from your competition if you're all using TV? Because like Facebook ads, whatever, like your message can be completely different. The TV, if there's like a best practice, how do you separate yourself?
So that's a great question. So when I started talking more publicly about TV, people saw in my market that I was talking about it. Mm-hmm. And at one point we had 4, it might've been 5 other competitors with us on TV. Mm-hmm. And we're in a pretty small market, 400,000 people. And I got a little worried, but then I looked at our numbers and like, we're still doing deals. So if fast forward today, 2 years, so that was about 2 years ago when the competition was the most, there's probably one other person that's running TV still out of those 4 to 5 people that were running TV against us. So I say that with, don't be worried if someone's on TV right now, because if they're not doing it right, if they're not handling these correctly, whatever, they're probably, the chances of them staying on TV long-term is a little slimmer if they're not doing it correctly. And then if you look at the numbers, like let's say you have from texting, I don't know, what do you think? 100 real estate investors texting, and Phoenix is probably hundreds.
Yeah.
Texting the same list. And so if you look at, on TV, it's usually in any market. Sometimes people will say that we don't think there's anybody in our market, which there may be like one or two maybe in their market. But let's say there's even 5. Mm-hmm. 5 people on TV compared to hundreds of people that are texting or sending the same postcard to the same list. So from a competition standpoint, I wouldn't worry about that too much. And then from a messaging standpoint, we've got scripts that we've tested over 13 years now, and we've spent millions and millions of dollars in marketing to test these scripts. So we know what scripts work well, whereas, if someone's not using us and trying to do it on their own or whatever, that they may not have it dialed in and the message correct. And then I think the biggest thing is making sure you're on the right, contacting the right stations and on the right shows.
Yeah.
So even if someone does have a really good commercial, if they did what I did back in 2005 and they start calling stations and, getting sold whatever they want to sell, and not getting it right, then they're kind of throwing money out the door.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, just make sure you do it right, do it with data. And you should be, above your competition if you do that.
Gotcha. Do you have like a rough number as far as like, we're talking about 1.3 million or 1.3 to 1.5, what that generally yields is as far as revenue goes?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of real estate investors don't want to give up their numbers, partially because they probably don't have them. A lot of real estate investors don't have their numbers, but when we do get the data, typically our clients, in the very beginning, it was a lot easier to get data because they were newer clients. Kind of us, we were a little bit newer, so we were fetching for the data more. But it was between a 5 and 10 times return is what most clients were getting. So if they're spending $5,000, they're getting at least 25 to 50 grand back in return. For me, that's, like I said, out of the gate, spent $3,000. I made over 35,000 my first month. I don't have the data from way back in 2012 because I didn't know my numbers back then. I know we made good money. But when I started really tracking it in, I think 17, so we have about 7 years of trackable data for our company. We're as low as the 3 times return on investment, which still isn't too bad considering all the credibility and all the things that come with it, and the fact that it's helping postcards and all that other stuff. And our highest is right around 12 times return. But I'd say a lot of our clients between 5 and 10x. The ones that aren't doing as well, 3 to 5x. And then we have some that, they launch and they just can't get over that 3x. And I think a lot of it, when we dive into it, has to do with sales.
Yeah. So 1.3 should be able to get you to 4 mil to, it was 12x, like 15 mil. So a lot. 1.3 million buys you a lot.
Buys you a lot. We should be generating anywhere from, I think like you mentioned, 4 million to, gosh, it could even be closer to 7 million when you average it all out or something like that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about like, the best practices, but, have you seen anything that's like with TV, you're like, man, like don't ever do that. Like you see people do things that are just like, why did you do that?
Obstacle I hear from newer wholesalers is finding buyers for their deals. Because unless you've built a massive buyers list or have a huge dispo team, you might struggle to move your deals. So when we started working with InvestorLive, we've been able to reach new buyers and sell deals faster at higher prices. We can see buyers in our area, their contact information, and with the new AI capabilities, connect with the buyers most interested in our deals based on the algorithms. We can also see who's clicked on our deals, how many pictures they clicked on, and how long they spent looking at it, and finally, what actions they took after engaging with our deals. We are now connected with thousands of buyers in our markets, and we now know exactly where we are with each deal and what next steps to take. If this sounds like something that would resolve or help your dispo process, I highly encourage you, go to the website, put in Disruptors for 10% off so you can focus on locking up deals and less time worried, stressed, and frustrated about finding buyers.
Yeah, so like I said, we've got quite a bit of data. There's things that I've tried. I've tried the car salesman commercials, so you guys probably see my demeanor by now. I'm pretty like chill. But I tried like, hey, this is Tony with, like really amped it up. And literally went from like great call volume to literally it just tanked. And we tried it for, it was at least a month. It might've been 2 months. It was long enough that it was like, okay, we can't do this any longer. And then we flipped it back to our regular commercial and the calls went back up again.
Oh, so the big sale this Sunday.
Exactly. Yeah. So, we have many different pieces of the puzzle that we feel like work well. So don't be super hypey. I think people like doing business with people rather than businesses. And that's why we encourage our clients to be on TV if they can. They get personal branding and they get to see the owner of the commercial. In fact, I thought about it the other day. Do you remember that CEO? I think it was LifeLock.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that commercial? And he would actually give his social security number out.
Yeah.
But I noticed some big companies started doing that. I don't know if he does them anymore, where they started putting the CEOs on the commercial, and it made it feel like you knew who the
the founder.
Yeah, the founder, and it felt a little more personable than just a big conglomerate company. So yeah, I think just being real. We edit our commercials pretty well, but you can still tell it's a real person. So I think people kind of connect with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle, and I think if you can get most of them right, you can do really well. If you get all of them right, I mean, you're really crushing it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of truth to it because, one of the things that I learned from my mentor was you don't do deals, you don't do business with Apple, you do business with Steve Jobs. You obviously don't, but it feels like you are, right? Like when you buy a Tesla, you're not buying from Tesla, the car company, you're buying from Elon. Like this is like Elon's product. So you have this idea, even though you're buying from this, Fortune 100 company, it feels like you're doing business with the owner. And those entities insurance companies or banks,
you have no idea who they are.
Yeah, right. Like we don't know. I mean, obviously the founders are long gone, but we don't know. There's no face attached to it. Like even Amazon, right? Like you're doing business. It feels like you know who Jeff Bezos is, even though we don't. It feels like we do. Or Facebook, we feel like we know who Zuckerberg is.
Yeah, it's true. I never thought of it that way.
Right? We feel like we do. I mean, we obviously don't. It's all PR, right? Like you read about Warren Buffett had this 1983 Cadillac, whatever. It's like that's what the PR says. He has other nice cars. That's just what the PR says.
Yeah, he's got the same house he's lived in for
in
40 years or something. But yeah, he's got some mansions other places.
Yeah, other places. But he still has that mansion. Yeah, like the PR. So, gotcha. Okay. Anything else about TV we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. I mean, to me, it's I just don't understand why more people don't do it. It's kind of a no-brainer, especially when you kind of know the numbers. Like if you're in a market like Wichita, Kansas, $5,000 a month can get you, pretty good amount of commercials. I'm not afraid to say that because I'm sure we're gonna have some competition, after seeing those numbers. But I just feel like it should be the center. I feel like TV and radio, billboards are, I don't encourage everybody to do them. We do them just because they're not super expensive, and I own one of them. But I think TV and radio, TV especially, should be the center of any marketing campaign just because it feeds. There's so many different things it does for the marketing as a whole. And then just omnipresence, as we mentioned, just as you get a lead, because people start with one lead channel. When you get one lead channel, find another one, and then find another one, and put that money into another one. And same thing even with TV. So it's interesting. We've launched some people with $5,000 a month, and some numbers that we were given, there was one client, he said he was doing consistently over $100,000 a month for the first 6 months.
Wow.
There might have been 1 or 2 months where he was under that. And he said he even had a $200,000 a month because he had a $100,000 deal and a bunch of others. But I'm just surprised, if that's yielding you good returns, why don't you, like the stock market, when you make money in the stock market, you put that money back in and you compound it. Well, I don't understand why people don't do that more with marketing. Obviously there's diminishing returns to where you get to a certain point, you probably don't want to spend more. But if $5,000 a month is getting you a lot, why not try 7? Why not try 9? So even some of the clients that we know are very smart, they're pretty happy because they're spending little and getting a big return. But I think if people looked at it from a perspective of compounding interest, let's say you go from 5 to 7, you're spending an extra $24,000 a year. Well, what if you can get an extra 3 to 4 deals out of that per year?
Yeah,
I mean, you're exponentially going to grow your business if you just keep thinking that way.
Yeah, I think there's probably some game theory involved. Some people want to maximize ROAS, right? Which I respect. That is one metric, but the other metric is well, which one will net you more, right? I think, I don't know what the right number is, but we're talking about game theory. You probably want to spend as much possible to net as much as you can, while still maintaining, maybe no worse than a 5x ROAS, right? They're what's the highest net you can get with a 5x ROAS versus trying to have the highest ROAS? Because I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because some people, well, first of all, they'll be well, one of the first questions is, what is your average cost per lead? And right then I'm okay, first of all, I can't tell you that because every market's going to be different. We have clients that have reported $50 to $100 a lead. We've had some clients that have reported $1,000 a lead. But the $1,000 lead person may be making way more money than the $50 to $100, $50 to $100 lead. But yeah, you're totally right. You have to look at it because people get too caught up in cost per lead. I think ROAS or ROI is a good metric, but you're right. You do have to dive into it further because you may go from 5 to 10. Your ROAS may go down from a 5 to let's call it a 4 or 3, but then your net profit at the end of the day is a lot higher.
80,000 higher a month.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that I think real estate investors just look at one metric or a couple metrics and they're like, okay, is the cost per lead good? Is the ROI good? Okay, great. And they don't look at some of the other factors that can really help them make better decisions.
Yeah, because I'm one that's tempted. I have a pretty high risk tolerance. I'm the one that kind of like let's boost it. Like if we're getting a 5x ROAS, like let's keep spending until we get to 3x ROAS, because like your expenses are pretty fixed, except for the marketing. If your fixed expenses are what they are, and you're getting a 3x ROAS, you can pretty much keep pumping money in as long as you're getting 3x ROAS. Your fixed expenses are the same.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Did I have something else here? I mean, I think that's. I did have one more question. So, but before we go there, like, I completely agree with the TV thing. I thought it was not a secret anymore. I thought everyone was doing it. So, like, if you guys are watching it and TV is available in your market, like, highly recommend it, right? Because I see consistently the 2 lead channels from we've got about 40 clients, right, that we have as coaching clients we do sales training with. And consistently, the top 2 lead sources are TV, PPC.
Yeah.
It's always those 2, right? Direct mail is always in the conversation, but it's consistently TV and PPC. So, like, if you guys aren't doing TV and you guys are watching this, consider TV. Are you guys doing anything as far as not TV, but video still? Like, for example, YouTube ads, Hulu, or whatever.
We are trying to crack YouTube ads. We tried it during the election, and I think it was just wrong timing.
That was the worst time.
Yeah. So we didn't get a lot of traction from it, but we're rolling it out here this Q1 again.
Yeah.
I think it could do well. I don't know that it'll do as well as TV, just because YouTube is and really. So going back to TV, so TV has 70 plus years worth of data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And tracking, and there's a system to it. YouTube, did we say YouTube TV? I think we meant YouTube ads.
I meant YouTube ads, yeah.
Okay, I can't remember if I thought I said YouTube TV. So yeah, YouTube ads are newer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 15 years ago or something like that. So there's just not as much data behind it. There's not as much credibility. So like with TV, even if you don't get direct ROI that's like really good, so say you get a 2 to 3 times return, there's still that credibility that you get that could still make it worth it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you do YouTube ads and you get that 2 to 3 times return, you're not getting the credibility and everything you're getting from traditional TV.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So we're going to try and crack it because I feel like there's some synergy with having our TV commercial and then having it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to take some time for us to.
Yeah. The election time was really rough because like I struggle because like I don't let my kids have their phones, right? Like they don't have phones, like not until high school, right?
Yeah.
But we do let them watch YouTube, right? And Arizona being a battleground state, I want to say it was 24/7 ads on abortion. Right, because like that was like Kamala's message. That was it, right? Abortion. There was no like we're going to turn the economy around. There's none of that. It was just abortion, right? Trump's taking abortion away. So I have to talk to my 7-year-old, and when she's like, "Dad, what's an abortion?" It's like this is a fun conversation, right? But I remember specifically, it was like November 6th or November 7th. It's like, oh, we have regular YouTube ads again. We're not talking about just abortion, because I promise you it was like 80%. It was wild because we're a battleground state.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the data shows as far as YouTube ads, because YouTube, Hulu, like they're not the same age, right? Like 70-year-olds are not on Hulu TV. But it'd be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's another key factor to it is traditional TV, you have our avatar, whereas YouTube isn't quite as much our avatar.
Yeah, I think the only thing you get from them is what they've Googled recently, right? That's the benefit of YouTube versus Hulu. Hulu, I think, is just kind of
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Any kind of streaming platform for the most part is going to be pretty random. So a lot of people come to us and be like, hey, do you recommend Over the Top or, these other streaming platforms? And there's just not enough data behind it. And they just spread you all kinds of different random places. And like I said, it just doesn't get as much credibility.
Yeah. I mean, no one's streaming The Price is Right? So, or Judge Judy.
Or Jerry Springer.
Yeah. Maybe during the Jerry Springer documentary, right? That's gonna be on Netflix.
There you go. Oh, is it really?
Yeah,
that'd be an interesting one.
Yeah, that was chaotic. So perfect. Yeah. So again, like I highly recommend it. We work with a lot of people. We're in CG, we're in Boardroom, and all these other places. Like TV consistently is one of their top two. So yeah, if you guys are watching and you guys haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. So any last message you want to leave all the listeners with?
I mean, just so I guess I'll touch on two things. One is get your business to where it doesn't need you anymore. I mean,
yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, last year, and when I say last year, 2024 could have been disastrous in many different ways. And especially if something would have happened to me, like if I would have not made it, would my family be okay? I would still have two businesses that would still be running without me. They might drop a little bit, just because there's not a leader in place at that point. They'd probably have to find a leader somehow. But that's one of the top things that I love talking about is getting your business to where it doesn't need you anymore. And it really doesn't take that many moves to get you there. For me, it was probably 3 different moves. It was hiring my sister, who was the solid person in the background to where I could go do my thing. I could go get deals under contract, manage contractors, all that kind of good stuff. And then eventually I'm like, okay, she actually helped put processes and systems together that I didn't have. So I put together some, but you hire good people, they're going to put even more in place. And then the third thing I did is I hired someone to kind of help lead the whole organization where I could step out of that. Because I wasn't the best at that. You got to know what you're good at and you got to know what you're not good at. And to me, I was someone that just liked to go from A to B or A to Z very quickly. And I didn't like talking about people's days. I didn't, I wasn't.
You want to go conquer.
Yeah, I wasn't, the foo-foo fluffy person that came in and made you feel good, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, just those really like 2 to 3 moves got me to where within 3 to 4 years I was able to kind of step out. And so 2015 is when, 15 is when I went from 60-hour weeks in my business to literally like 2-hour weeks in that business. So that's kind of words of encouragement to figure out how to get there. And then from a marketing perspective, marketing and sales are the 2 biggest things in your business. You got to find people to come in. Obviously, you have to have a good product. You have to serve them, all that kind of stuff. But you can get them in the door and you can figure out how to sell them. It's game over, right? So just being able to be omnipresent with your marketing, be very consistent, do it right, have your data, and then just handle the leads correctly. So between getting on TV and having good sales training, I mean, there's no reason you can't be good at this business. And I think those are the 2 things that people have managed to conquer is that they do very well in this business are sales and marketing.
You can solve a lot of problems if you're good at sales and marketing. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for jumping on. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Jump on the Steve Trang. Disruptors.